Hey everybody, Eric Dorward here, starting a new build for the Spartan Rocketry Club, and this is the Rocketarium Mega Rebel. So this one is an unusual kind of rocket, as you can see from the picture, at least before I got the package open. So normal rockets, of course, have a tube, and that builds the shape. This one, on the other hand, is kind of like a skeletal version of what a rocket might be. This is by no means going to be aerodynamic, since it's got a whole lot of exposed faces here, but it should be fun and at least interesting looking to fly. This one, we should start off with a warning. It runs off of 24 millimeter motors, so either Estes black powders up to an E12, or I guess you can fly it up to an F apparently if you're using 24 millimeter composites. But this kit does require fairly extensive use of CA glue. That'd be crazy glue. So it is not really for anybody who is not already an adult. But that's fine. We will get started anyway because it should be a fun and entertaining build. So Rocketarium kits they come in a box, which is nice, as opposed to just a bag like your typical Estes kit. And this one uses, it's like plywood. Might be plywood. I don't know. But it's not balsa, I can tell you that much. It's based on what I'm looking at here. Rocketarium tends to do things modularly as well, so I'm going to clean all this stuff out. Oh, there's a Q-tip. Oh, this is a glue applicator, apparently, so that'll be fun. I'm going to get most of the stuff out of the way. We are going to start at the beginning. And the beginning is to build the motor mount. As I said, this is on the modular side of things. So a lot of Rocketarium kits have the pre-packaged version of their motor mounts that have their own separate instructions, which is interesting enough. So the main instructions say follow the sub instructions, and here they are. This ought to be pretty familiar ground to follow here. We've got an engine spacer, so this could fly off of D's or E's, or more accurately, short or long 24 millimeter motors. So let's see what we're going to do. The instructions for these tend to have decent color pictures and a whole lot more descriptive text than your average Estes one, but they're less intuitive at the same time. All right, so it says we need to place a ring of glue 3/4 of an inch inside any end of the motor tube. This will be the forward end, and then use a pusher to push it in. So 3/4. Yeah, I'm going to grab my dowel. Here we are. Oh, this one apparently has a bunch of epoxy on it from a previous excursion, so that's fine. Shouldn't make any difference. 3/4 of an inch. It's actually somewhat specific, so I'm going to mark off where 3/4 of an inch is, just to appease the rocketry gods here. So it's not terribly far. I'm sure I will need the ruler again soon. So instructions out of the way. A little bit of glue. And then I'm going to paint the glue on the interior of the tube like usual up to my 3/4 inch line. Truthfully, this probably didn't need to be done with a lot of accuracy, because I'm going to end up using the pusher anyway. All right, so the engine block goes in here, and I'm going to, I'm going to push the spacer into the block aft until the aft end of the spacer is flush with the aft end of the motor tube. So a lot of times when you do Estes ones, you put a mark on here and then only push it in that far. Well, apparently I'm going to use the entire spacer here and make sure it's flush, so I'm just leaving it flat on the ground and then remove. That looks fine. Looking down, I can see there's some glue at least I didn't quite, I put it too shallow, but it's fine. There's plenty of glue holding that in place. All right. Allow glue to dry. Yeah, not doing that. we're going to keep on going. All right, so cut a slit 3 3/4 inches from the aft end of the tube. Remember reading the instructions to push the motor block into the aft opposite end of the motor tube until the aft end of the spacer. Yeah, so this is the aft end apparently. Well, that makes sense because that's where the motor is going to be sitting out. Okay, so I need to measure 3 3/4 inches. So get this stuff out of the way. So 3 3/4 inches should be. Have this propped up. Don't want that. All right, 3 3/4 inches. Not a problem. I'm going to mark it right there. And this is where I'm going to use my hobby knife and the engine. Whoops, that's not a knife. That's a pencil. The engine hook is going to go in here. So just gently, you can trace it if you want to. You should really be just fine kind of pushing in. It feels like I'm going kind of right in the middle of the engine retainer. So that's not reassuring. Obviously, that's not what I'm intending to do. And it looks like it's dead center. I'm going to remeasure this because that doesn't feel like it ought to be the case. Let's just remeasure this. This thing should be 4.5 inches long. Yeah. It's 4 1/4. Yeah, that's that doesn't make a whole lot of sense there. All right, well, 3 3/4 should be. Yeah, I've measured it right, and it looks like it's supposed to go in front of the block in here. Let's just double check that the block is far enough in. I mean, I can't imagine that it wouldn't be. That's fine. All right. Well, then plan B here is if this cut isn't, or this line isn't terribly accurate, I'm going to drift up a little bit and try to find where the engine block actually is. So it looks like that's right about here. So I'm just going to cut a little slit right above the engine block, and that's off by almost 1/4 inch. Well, that shouldn't be a problem because the engine's going to fit in there one way or the other, and the hook at the back should retain it, I would think. Yeah, well, there is a little picture here showing that the hook is going to go right in front of the motor mount. Okay, and it says, yeah, the slit should be right in front above the motor block so that the tab of the clip rests on the motor block. Do not cut into the motor block. Okay, well, no problem. Insert the clip. If it does not rest on the motor block, turn the tube and make another cut. Well, it's just about perfect right now, so I am happy with that. Glue the clip locking ring, the thick gray 1 inch, or gray ring, 1 inch from the aft end of the tube. So that's going to go on like this, but I need to measure again. It says 1 inch. This one I'm fairly confident is just going to be, it doesn't matter all that much, but it says 1 inch, so we'll measure 1 inch. There we go. So that means I need to put some glue across at the 1 inch mark here. And I'm putting the glue well ahead of it because I want to get into the glue before I get to the line. And there's the line. I'm going to smooth that out. Okay. Very good. And now it says find the centering ring with a small notch and glue it in place, positioning it slightly over the forward end of the clip. It should be, oh wait, sorry. The small notch, that's this one. Yeah. The small notch is right there. And there's a hole in it as well. Anyway, it says glue it in place, positioning it slightly over the forward end of the clip. So that, I don't have a measurement here to make, but I'll line it up and then just kind of wiggle it down a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to put my glue. I'm going to put it like right at the point where the metal piece cut in, like so. And then I'm going to push it just past, like this. No, I don't have it quite lined up this time. That's a shame. All right, there we go. This, by the way, is a piece of wood, so it's a little bit more robust than the typical engine retainer that I'm used to. Well, not engine retainer, a motor mount kit that I'm used to that has just cardboard or cardstock. All right, so I'm going to clean that out. Now I want to be careful. See this hole? I'm going to need that in the near future, so I want to make sure I don't get any glue in that. So that's fine. And then the last bit says I want to put this piece on, and I want to glue it 1/4 of an inch. 1/4 of an inch. Did I make that mark? I don't remember making that mark. But it is 1/4 of an inch, so let's go with it. That little color, I'm pretty sure I didn't do that, but, that's fine. Again, I'm going to put the glue in front of that because I'm going to push the ring through the glue to get to that 1/4 of an inch mark. Okay, and then slide it down to the mark. And I'm going to slide this part up. It's like I was really only moving the top and not the bottom. Okay, so that's lovely. Again, I'm going to clean up my glue mess here, just smoothing that out. And you should really try not to get glue underneath or around or on top of the metal clip, but I mean, the glue's not going to hold it. So if worst case scenario, if it temporarily gets stuck, you can just break the glue. It's not that hard. All right. Anyway, the last bit says be careful not to break the ring. Yeah, no problem. As you slide it over the tube, make sure the notch is positioned above the clip. Well, mission accomplished there. Just making sure everything is more or less straight. I want this part to be pointed directly across at this part, not offset or anything. And I do want the rings to be as circular as possible, so I don't have like crooked like this, but I want it to be at perpendicular 90-degree angles. All right, so that takes care of the motor mount for now. The little side instructions are now complete. There is another thing that I need to do though with this, and I need to go into one of the bags and find, here we are, this one right here. So this is nice again. It's even a little Ziploc bag. I need to find this bit of Kevlar. So the instructions here, the way this is going to work is this is going to be tethered into the hole here, and this is going to be like the anchor point for our shock cord and all that. So this is actually, compared to the classic Estes approach, which isn't bad, I mean, it works just fine, of making that little trapezoid, folding it over a couple times, then gluing it on the interior of the rocket body. This is both stronger because you're gluing it into a major anchor point, and it's also less likely to like snag the chute or anything like that on the way out. Also, it makes it easier to like pack the chute since you don't have to fight against the anchor point. The downside, of course, is all the hot gas from the ejection charge is going to be coming out right here. So if your thread is right here, you need a thread that can take that abuse. Kevlar is pretty good at that. It is not indestructible, but it is pretty tough stuff. All right, anyway, so it says in the small bag, we need to find the Kevlar cord. We want to thread one end of the Kevlar shock cord through the small hole in the forward ring. We need to wrap the cord around the motor tube and thread it back through the same hole. So this is going to be a little on the dicey side. So I need to thread that through, and you can see it's kind of fraying. So I don't know. I would consider getting a needle here, but seeing how I didn't really think that part through, I guess I'll go with the old classic approach of just going to kind of wet this, put it in my mouth, and hope that works a little bit better. then just, yeah, that's actually pretty bad. I'm going to try the other end here. Um, Fortunately, this is a bit frayed from being cut. So this isn't exactly going terribly well considering the size of this. Honestly, I think I do need a needle. I'm going to have to find a pretty small one to thread this, but yeah, I think I need a needle. So I'm going to have to pause this. I will be right back. Okay, so I went and found, I don't exactly know what kind of needle this is, but I think it's from an embroidery set. I don't know. That's not the hobby that I do. Anyway, the one nice thing is because the eye was so wide, it didn't really matter that this was fraying out. In fact, it kind of frayed in the right direction to make it easier to get through the hole. Anyway, so I'm going to fail miserably. There we go. Thread the needle through the hole, pulling this through. There we go. And wrap it around. This is going to be the part where I really want the needle. And then it has to go back through. So this is going to be a tight fit. I don't know how I would have done this by hand, honestly. But this may not even work too well this direction either. This is a snug fit. Yeah, that is not a big hole. Let's see if I... There we go. Come on. Almost got it. Yeah, this is not easy. I don't know how you would do this by hand. Other than, I don't know, make the hole a little bit bigger. There we go. Oh, that's great. Pull through. Really trying not to like dislodge anything. Okay, there we go. I got it. All right, so this is actually got too much in this direction. So I'm going to very carefully readjust here so that I have some, but not a lot sticking out. Let's move that so I don't stab myself with the hook. All right, anyway, wrap the end around the motor tube, thread it back through the same hole. That was thoroughly exciting. Tie both ends of the cords together with a parallel overhand knot. I have no idea what that is, but that's okay. I mean, you could Google it, I guess, if you really want to know, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tie like a double knot into this, kind of how I end up tying off shock cords, the elastic part of them anyway. And that should, you want to, you know what, we got some space. Let's do one more just for good measure, just to make sure. Because this part, so the downside to having a mount that's in the, a shock cord mount anyway, that's in the motor, is that this part is, this is the only time it's accessible, essentially. I think that's about as good as it's likely going to get. Once you put this inside the body tube, you're not getting it back, right? So if this breaks or comes untied or anything unexpected happens to it, you're out of luck. And you can't just like, oh, fish it out and try it again. It's in there for keeps, and whatever you do now had better be pretty good. All right, now it says, pull the cord forward and apply glue to the Kevlar cord wrapped around the tube so that it is glued to the motor tube. Okay, so we're going to essentially, I'm going to pull that forward so it's out of the way, but we're going to kind of put a fillet around this to glue the shock cord in place and to make this a little bit stronger as well. Just going to glue, actually, really get a lot there. Okay, that looks pretty good. So I'm going to smooth that out. So this is basically a fillet. It is just a like multi-purpose fillet. There we go. Hold the elastic in place as well. It also says apply a drop of glue to the knot. All right. Now, typically, I would say when I'm working with Kevlar like this, the kind of glue I use would be CA. just to make sure that knot doesn't go anywhere, but that's fine. We can glue, since we're using wood glue anyway. Wouldn't hurt to just use wood glue. All right, so that takes care of the motor mount. Essentially, everything we need here is done. Now, the instructions say at this point that if you, so the picture of the kit, the motor mount, actually, well, I mean, I can show you. I don't need to tell you. Show, not tell, right? Anyway, the rocket itself is just raw wood in this picture. The tube in the middle where the motor is going to go is this. That's painted red. You can. I don't think I'm going to. I think I'm just going to go with the natural look for this because it's such an odd build anyway. But it's the instructions say that if you want to paint the tube or paint the whole thing, then you want to be painting the tube at this point. I don't think I'm going to do that. So in the next video, yeah. Oh wait, sorry. There's one more thing to do. Get kind of ahead of myself. I need to use the elastic cord here, and I'm going to. It's not that. I'm going to tie a knot to connect these two. Now it says hold the Kevlar cord and the elastic cord side by side with the ends even to each other. Yeah. And then tie a single parallel overhand knot 1 inch from the ends. So you use both cords. You don't like tie them into each other. You tie them together like this. There we go. And this is how they kind of merge together. So anyway, pull both ends to set the knot. That's tight, and that's tight. I guess that's as good as that's going to get. And that does seem to be slipping, though. I don't love that. I feel like this probably needs another pass through here, just to make sure. Okay. I like that better. That feels a lot stronger. Oh, but does it though? Wait. All right, that's better. Seems to be holding much more nicely. Okay. Anyway, that's as good as it's gonna get. So this is our shock cord and our. Let's hope it protects things well enough. Bit of Kevlar. All right, that takes care of the first stage here. This thing needs to dry, and then it's ready to be going into the next set. So I will see you for part 2.